I was born in Woodward, Oklahoma, October 24th, 1954.
And did you grow up wanting to be a cowgirl?
Yes. My family are ranchers, and so being, of course, my first aspiration wasn't rodeo, it was raising horses, so, and cattle.
What was your first competition?
My first competition was junior rodeos. I can't tell you exactly the first junior rodeo I went to because my memory isn't that good. But my Aunt Helen Riley had a retired barrel horse, Old Roni. She gave Old Roni to my sister and me, and we started running rodeo, junior rodeos with Roni. And he taught us how to run barrels. And then we also had a pole horse, and we ran poles and did a little goat tying, and that was back when I was probably about 10.
What was it about the sport of rodeo that made you want to continue competing in it?
The thrill of winning, the thrill of running around those three barrels with your whole heart and your horse, and the people, the rodeo people were fascinating to be around, and I just fell in love with rodeo.
Did you get a lot of support from your family?
Yes, lots of support. My mom and dad ranched, but both or one of them always went with me. And they sacrificed a lot of their time, and they'd always have a hired hand, but they sacrificed by being gone to be with me. And it was, and my grandma and grandpa Harrison, my mom's folks, they would show up at rodeos. We never knew where they was going to show up. That might be Kentucky, it might be Indiana, it might be Kansas. And we'd look up, and there they'd be in their car to come see me run barrels. And at the National Finals Rodeo, lots of family always went. So I was very blessed.
So what made it, like, just from continuing to compete, that made you want to make it a career then?
Going to my first National Finals Rodeo in 1966, probably. I don't think, it was the first year, I think, that the girls were able to run at the NFR. And when I saw those girls, because I'd already gotten bit by the barrel racing bug at junior rodeos, and when I saw those girls run there, it just sparked a fire in me. And I went home and told the lady that would come around with the laundry truck, because back then, you know, so many of your clothes had to be dry cleaned and all that, so we had a laundry truck that would come on their route. And I told her about the national finals, and I said, I'm going to run there someday. And then as I got to running and doing good and winning, it was just addictive.
Did you have any type of mentor or idol that you looked up to?
Probably Joyce Burt Koenig was someone I looked up to, and she won the world the first year I made the national finals in 1970, and I looked up to Joyce a lot. That's probably the main one that comes to mind. I had a lot of support. Lydia Moore, the secretary of the Women's Professional Rodeo Association, was such a supporter of me and encouraged me. And so I owe a lot to her too, because she helped me learn the ins and outs. And Florence Urey, there's so many of those barrel racers back then that inspired me.
When did you join the GRA?
I got my permit. The first one was probably in 1968. And by the fall of 1969, I had filled my permit. And so no one told me about the rookie award. and I was making the fall rodeos and filled my permit, and so I just went ahead and bought my card. And so the fall of 1969 is when I got my card, and I was 14 years old.
Was it intimidating to be that young racing against older ladies?
Yes, a little bit. Yes, it was. And there, you know, I'm not going to lie. There was a few that played a few little mind games, you know, with me. But I just looked up to him, and I was so blessed with a great, consistent, big-hearted horse. And he wasn't very big, and they giggle at me sometimes because the excuse was so small. And I'd be riding around. I've got a picture from the NFR, and I should have found it, that showed me riding around the warm-up arena with Kathy O'Brien and I can't remember who else. There was Kathy O'Brien, three of us in the picture, and there they were, and then there was me. And so people did giggle a little bit once in a while at how small excuse was, but once they saw him run, they didn't giggle anymore.
Other than your folks, did you travel with anybody to rodeos?
No. Just my sister got bit by the bug while she was in college, and so Barbara traveled with me, and she made the national finals in 1974, the year I won the world. And then she worked for Billy Minnick. I think it was mostly Billy Minnick that she carried colors for and timed, and then ran barrels at his rodeos. And so I traveled with my sister and my mom and dad. Then when Barb and I got a little older, sometimes they allowed us to go by ourselves, and so we would travel together. But I didn't travel with anybody else.
So tell me a little bit about Excuse. Where did you get him, and did you train him and all that kind of stuff?
Yes. My dad bought him from my Uncle Leroy Day, who is no longer with us, and my dad isn't either. He's been gone 32 years. But Uncle Leroy had this 14 one-hand tall 4-year-old bay gelding, weighed about 1,000 pounds, and he bucked with Uncle Leroy. So Uncle Leroy talked Dad into buying him for $300. And Dad couldn't get him to quit bucking either. So it doesn't say really a real positive thing for Dad, because he put me on him, the horse that bucked. But he never tried to buck me off. He would crow hop with me. I was, or what I call crow hopping, it was just kind of a jump, kick. He didn't get down to bucking with me. And I was 12 at the time. And so I started training him on poles. Dad said, well, I don't think he'd be fast enough for barrels, but maybe he'd be quick enough to run poles. Excuse hated it. When a pole would be weaving in the wind, he would jump sideways, and he hated the poles, and I hated poles. I never liked running poles. I don't know why, I just didn't. And Excuse, I would ride him in the pasture and go up and down sand hills. We live in sagebrush sandhill country in Woodward, and I would get him lathered up and then bring him down. I had 3 sets of barrels, one in about a 40-acre patch, one just down by the corrals, and then one up in the pasture. And I would cool him out by walking around the barrels, but I never told Dad I was working him on the barrels. So I would just walk him until he'd cool out, and then after he got to just walking it, just, you know, without me doing anything, then I would quit riding him so hard in the pasture. He'd still crow hop with me some, and I would start trotting him, and I was just going by what Roni had taught me, you know. I knew Roni set when he got ready to turn. So I would take him and trot him and set him at the barrel where I would form, and I didn't realize it was a pocket. And I was trying to think which barrel racer taught me about pockets. I can't remember who it was. But I would trot him around the barrels and then set him and trot him around the barrels, and we'd do that. And then we finally got to where we were loping. I'd still set, and then kick him out and go around the barrels. And finally started, getting a little speed with it. Well, I just knew he was doing great, So I finally told Dad, I said, Dad, I need you to come down to the barrels. So Dad came down there and crawled up on the fence, and I ran Excuse. And Dad said he just dang near fell off the fence because he said it was, to him, amazing. Excuse just whipped every barrel. And he entered us in the Winoka Amateur Rodeo. No jackpots. We didn't have jackpots up there in Northwest Oklahoma. And we didn't go to a jackpot, we just went to an amateur rodeo, and he walked into the arena with his ears flopped out, and he didn't know what he was gonna do, and I got him up to the gate, and people snickered, and it made me mad, and I kicked him out, and he went out there and just whipped through the barrels. Never bothered him a bit that he'd never been at a night rodeo or anything. And I can't remember if we won it or we just placed. But he did good. And so then we started going to some amateur rodeos, and not as many junior rodeos because they didn't pay very much. And like Dad said, we needed to have it be where he got some money back on it. And so we went to a lot of amateur rodeos and then got my permit, and the rest is history.
Did you ride Excuse through your whole career, or did you get to have another horse after?
Nope, I rode him my whole career. Ever run at the NFR for 6 years. He was it. And that's the way most of the girls did it back then. We didn't have 2 and 3 and 4 horses. When we had a good barrel horse, that's the horse we hauled on the road, and that's the horse we ran at the NFR all 10 runs. It was a different world back then than it is now. And I don't know what it would feel like to have 2 or 3 horses, Now I do from futurities, because I did get to training futurity colts, but in later years. But Excuse was it.
What was it like to go to your first national finals, to have made it there and be there?
That was in 70. So I would have just, I had just turned 15, I think. And I was a nervous wreck. I was scared to death. I looked up to all those girls, and I couldn't believe I was there. And I rode terrible. It was just, I rode so stiff and so nervous. I won 1/4, and it paid $54. And I paid a $100 entry fee to be there. We had to pay entry fees at the national finals back then. So it was a learning experience. And we also had a horseshoer come up to us after the last performance. And he said, I'd like to talk to you and your dad. And I said, okay, I was like, what's he want? And he said, I'd like to talk to you about how your horse is shod. He said, I think I can help him stride out better. And so we listened to him, and he explained what he would do and all that, and we took a chance, and he started shoeing Excuse, and it did make a world of difference in his stride. And can't remember his name, isn't that awful? But then Red Edmonds started shooting him when that guy retired, and Red kept us, and he kept the same angles and made the horseshoes, and so Red kept us going for many years, and it got better.
How did you see the national finals change over all of your qualifications?
Oh gosh. Horses were starting to get faster, but Excuse was the type that the more I asked him, the more he'd give, and it just became a little more, for me, I was just getting older and more mature, so it was more professional, and it became more of a career for me because I was aging. And so I think that's how it changed. The actual rodeo itself, we were still, by 75, it was still like a family. There wasn't near as many contestants at all. So we were at the same rodeos about all the same time. And we were a big family. It was a great experience. Just like I was telling you about TJ Walters, we still called each other on the phone about once a month, and I hadn't rodeoed with TJ since 1975. But you just had bonds with those cowboys and cowgirls.
What was it like to win the title?
Oh my gosh. I was runner-up to the championship 4 years in a row. So in 70, 71, 72, 73, I was a runner-up. And you get a little bit the feeling like I'm never going to win it, But then I think about it and I think, but I've been there 4 times, right there. And the consistency excuse shows that's worth as much as a world's championship. So when I finally won it, it was a relief, and it was exciting. Then I was like, this is what it feels like.
Did it change anything? Just the way you thought about rodeo?
It gave me more confidence. Gave me more confidence in myself. Made me feel special. And I don't mean that in a conceited way by any means at all. But it gave me some validation. Gave me validation.
What were some of your other favorite rodeos to go to?
Sydney, Iowa was a great rodeo to go to because of the food. It's all about the food. They treated us really good at Sydney. I liked the big arena. We sometimes would have 10 runs. There wouldn't be that many girls entered at Sydney, and we would run every performance. It got to where we'd run about 5 times, and they had the 4-H building with the bell that rang, and they had fresh fried chicken, mashed potatoes and gravy, and fresh corn on the cob, and sliced tomatoes. And it was just so much fun. And everybody would be there because it was kind of the same thing, there was not enough people to be a 2-header or a 1-header. And Fort Madison, Iowa, who is being honored at this year's induction, I liked going there because they also treated us special. I'm trying to think. Pikes Peak or Bust, I always liked coming here. There was Woodward, my hometown rodeo was a good rodeo to go to, except when it became at the same time as Cheyenne. And then I had to make a hard decision, and that was very hard to make because I loved running at my hometown rodeo, but then there was so much more money to go north, and so I had to make a decision. Money rules.
What was it like to serve on the WPRA board?
It was an eye-opener. You think, well, I'll do this and I'll do that and I'll make such a difference. And you can, but you learn on the board of directors. You don't make decisions for yourself. I think probably the biggest thing I learned was you learn to think and make decisions for the betterment of the organization. And it was a learning experience. I learned a lot, and it was rewarding. And I got to be on the board when they started, we made the push for equal money. And that was tremendous. It was hard, because it was hard to make that decision to take a stand and say, okay, equal money or we don't approve your rodeo. We toiled over that many times, but it had to be done. It had to be done. And I think I need to ask somebody that would remember from back then. I think almost every rodeo came back that didn't approve for a year or two, because we do offer quality barrel racing.
Was it hard to not sanction those rodeos?
Yes, it was very hard not to. And you felt bad on one hand, but yet it cost us just as much to go down the road as it did the cowboys, timed events, because we had to haul our horse and pull a trailer and feed our horse and all that. So it was costing us as much to go, and the crowd enjoyed our event so much. It was the second most popular event next to bull riding. So it was a deal where we just felt like that we earned and deserved to have equal money.
What were some of your favorite memories about competing?
A lot of favorite memories was the camaraderie we had with the other contestants of all events. The friends that I made back then, I'm still in contact with today. It's been 50 years since I won the World's Championship, 55 years since I got my card. So I'm still very close to a lot of the people I rodeoed with. I think the friendships and the family feeling was very important to me, because I didn't hardly go to high school. I rodeoed. I had a superintendent and a principal that supported me, and they said, as long as you keep your work up and your grades up, we think the education you'll get on the road is as important too. And so I was hardly ever there. I didn't ever find out my sophomore year. My junior year, I missed 80 out of 180 days of school. My senior year, they took me off the rolls because they weren't getting state money for me because I was gone so much. So I don't know exactly how many absences I had, but it was more than 80. But I homeschooled myself, is what I did. Mom and Dad, neither one graduated high school. No one had gone to college in my immediate family, except Barbara went but didn't finish, and Barbara wasn't rodeoing at the time I was going to high school, or in high school. She was at college, so I had to homeschool myself. It was hard. It was hard, but it was worth it. It was worth it.
What was one of the major obstacles that you faced, do you think?
Trying to win enough money to go down the road. That was, Excuse was consistent. He placed on the average, I figured it up one time, it was just almost 80% of the rodeos we went to, which was pretty good. And so I was winning checks 80% of the time I was on the road, but it still was hard to justify because Mom and Dad helped me. They bought the trailer, they bought the pickup. I would pay all expenses, gas and food, and I did all expenses, but it was hard. Like I said, we had to pay $100 entry fee at the NFR the first few years I went. In fact, maybe every year I went. I can't remember when they started paying the entry fee. But that was hard sometimes to even pay that $100 entry fee by the end of the year. I'd won a lot, but the expenses ate it up. So that was the challenge. Praise the Lord, they're making some money now.
Yep. How do you think being a involved in rodeo shaped you as a person?
It taught me how to win and how to lose, and that you win and lose in all aspects of life, and you've got to win graciously and you've got to lose graciously. My dad always told me, you've got to lose as good as you win and vice versa. He said you can't throw a fit, you can't get mad, because he always told me, he said there's not one girl on the road that can't outrun you any given run. And he preached that. He said, don't ever think that you can't be beat. And so I've applied that to my life. You know, I've done a lot of things in my life since I quit rodeoing. And but I carry those standards with me.
When you were competing, you weren't allowed to wear denim jeans, were you?
Nope.
Did you make a lot of your clothes, or did you buy them?
Judy Arnold made my clothes. She was a barrel racer, and I think Judy made the finals. I'd have to look that up in the history books. She rodeoed a lot and was just gifted with a sewing machine. And so after the first 2 or 3 years, I bought my clothes until then, and then Judy started making me clothes, and I won Best Dressed a couple of times, and I had real colorful clothes, and pinks and purples and orange and green. I had hats to match, and when I first started in 1970, when I went full time that year, and in '69 when I was going on permit and all, I had one pair of lame pants. Now you ought to try to run barrels in lame pants. They're slick. And that's what a lot of the girls wore, was pants made out of lame, and so that shows you how good of riders they were. And I wore those lame pants a lot with different shirts. But Judy made my clothes for me through the bulk of my years, and I really appreciated that. She has since passed, had a heart attack, and we lost her young. But
how have you seen rodeo change from the time you started until now?
oh my. I hit the road again in the '80s with a good horse I trained for fraternities. He was unbelievable. Got killed the year I was in the top 15 on him. A vet ran his thumb through his rectum and did a rectal on him, and 3 surgeries a month later he was gone. But I really think he'd have won the world again for me. But I saw a lot of changes from the '70s to the '80s. It was not as family oriented. It was not, there was more contestants, so you weren't anywhere as long as you were in the past, so you didn't have that interaction with everybody. And that was one change. Money was getting better. It was getting better, and that was good. And now, someone asked me here a while back if I had taken the results from my finals to see how much I would have won in today's world. I said, no, I haven't, because it'd make me puke. It would make me sick to my stomach. Because in 1972, that was my best finals. Martha Tompkins was running then, and her good black horse won 6 goes. I won 3, the other 3, and then I can't remember who won the 10th go. I won 3 seconds behind Martha. And so Martha and I dominated that '72 finals, and it was good. But the money is probably now the biggest change there is, because they're making some money everywhere. Because I just saw that, was it Reno or one of the rodeos that just happened, the barrel racer won $11,000. I won $11,000 when I won the world. So money is the big change.
Where do you see rodeo heading in the future?
Oh my, if we keep the cowboy channel and the cowgirl channel, I see it doing nothing but getting better. People are watching those stations. It's expanded the fan of the rodeo, and I think it's been a great addition and a great tool for rodeo. And I know I watch it a lot. My sister watches it constantly. It's just that my mom watches it a lot. And we were already fans, but it's re-inspired, you know, because you're getting to actually watch and learn who the cowboys and the barrel racers are. And the breakaway is a great addition, I think. My mom likes it a lot, and she's 90, and she goes, I like that breakaway. She feels sorry for the baby calves and the calf roping. But, you know, I said, but Mom, they don't jerk them down anymore. And she goes, you're right, they don't. I said, so we're still good to go on calf roping. And, but I see rodeo continue to grow. I think it will continue to grow, and we're going to keep the young people interested in the sport so that they will become contestants.
What was your favorite part about being a rodeo contestant?
The competition, the winning, you know, it gets in your blood. You want to win. And that adrenaline rush when you make a good run, and your horse would feel it, he'd know. And there was always a feel to him after him and I made a really good run. But that's what my inspiration was, the joy of winning.
What do you think you learned the most from competing in rodeo?
How to be a good character person. How to be a friend. How to be, like I said before, a gracious winner. I learned lots of lessons like that of how to be a good person.
If you could give a rookie a piece of advice, what would it be?
Love what you do. Don't whip on your horse. Your horse needs to love it as much as you do. And for your horse to love it, you can't run him to death when you're working him. You've got to let him love the barrel racing as much as you do. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes barrel racers will make sometimes, is overworking their horses after the horse is already made, and also not letting them create their own style. I'm a firm believer in letting my horse that I'm on at the time, I don't make them work to fit me. I let them work and then I fit them. And I think that's important.
What did you do after you left rodeo?
After I left rodeo, my son was born in '76, and that's when I hung the spurs up, and then Excuse got killed in a freak accident on the ranch. And so I went to work, and I got divorced. I went to work in the oil field for a wireline service company, Dresser Atlas. And I was a draftsperson, which wasn't one that you didn't get the skill from college, you got it from learning it on the job. It wasn't exactly, at first I thought a draftsperson. But anyway, I did that for about four or 5 years, and then the oil field busted. And then I went back to riding horses and training barrel racing horses. And I learned about futurities. And so I started training futurity colts and had a good run at that. And then I had a 3-year-old mare that belonged to my uncle. We were just riding around a friend's arena. We hadn't even been going around the barrels or doing anything. And all of a sudden she just flipped. To this day, I have no idea why she flipped, but she landed right beside me. And I saw that saddle hit the ground. And my life literally flashed before my eyes, because if she'd have landed on me, because just like what happened to Malcolm Baldridge, who was in the cabinet for Ronald Reagan, he was team roping, his horse flipped and killed him. So that's kind of what went through my mind. I thought, well, I'd either been dead or so busted up. So I loaded her up, I went home, and I told Mom and Dad, I said, I need a college education. I need something to do if I can't ride horses. So that fall, that was in the summer, and that fall, I moved to Weatherford, Oklahoma, and started my college career. I was 32, and the college kids didn't really realize how old I was, so I fit right in. And I had time of my life going to college. I loved learning. I was horrible in English in school and not good in science, and math was my forte. But I got to college. I made A's in my English classes. I made A's in my science classes because of, I think, maturity and reading. I finally got to read for fun when I got out of school, and that helped. But I graduated summa cum laude with a math degree from Southwestern Oklahoma State University. So I started teaching math, high school math. I didn't want little kids, I wanted the big kids. And so I taught school for about 7 or 8 years. And then I decided to go to Montana and work on a guest ranch. If I was going to work in the summer, I thought the mountains. I loved the mountains. So I called the guest ranch up that I saw an article on. They hired me over the phone. I loaded up, went to Montana, and they signed a contract with R.J. Reynolds to do a big consumer promotion for Marlboro. And they were going to have 5-day, 4-night trips for people from all over the United States, from cities, come to it was a replica of a Wild West town the guy that owned it had made. And so I went to work for them, and was there a year, and we did that, and I got my son to come out and join me. I said, put your stuff in storage at college and come to Montana. This is awesome. Well, I found out about a career with corporate meeting planning companies, and I decided I wanted to try it, and my son did too. So I moved back home, put my resume out there to corporate meeting planning companies, and they call us travel directors. We have nothing to do with directing travel. So I don't know why they call us that, but that's what it's called. And I started getting jobs. My first job was in 1999 for Merritt's Travel, or Merritt's Meeting Planning Company, and they do Edward Jones, the financial company's meetings. And so I went to and worked at Woodlands in Houston and did 2 weeks of summer regional meetings and learned on the stuff. I kind of knew what they did because they used them at the ranch. They used travel directors on the ranch. So I had a pretty good idea of what I needed to do. And I learned on the job, and I did that 8.5 years. I quit teaching and was on the road 8.5 years, going from city to city, and went to Europe 3 times, and Puerto Rico and Hawaii, but mostly Vegas, Chicago, LA, Florida, and worked meetings, pharmaceuticals, car companies, financial companies, insurance companies, and troubleshot, coordinated, did everything that needed to be done to make sure a meeting went off flawless. And I did that 8.5 years, and then I decided to go back into teaching, but I wanted to teach at a small school. So I went to work at a bank for 4 years, which I loved, but it didn't pay very good. So as soon as a small town math teaching job opened up, I applied, was lucky enough to get it, and I taught there for 11 years, and I retired 2 years ago to take care of my 90-year-old mom. So I've done a lot.
That's a lot, yeah.
Yeah.
But it sounds wonderful.
Yeah,
That's
it's been, and for the induction, I've got friends from each area from teaching, from meeting planning or meeting travel directing, my college, my rodeo, that are coming to help me celebrate.
That's
And
awesome.
that means the world to me.
So on that note, what does this induction mean to you?
Oh my gosh. It's back to that word validation. And it shows me that people recognize the work I did and my horse and what we accomplished. And it's validation. And it's exciting, and I don't even know if it feels real yet. You know, I was so excited when I got the call from Jimmy Monroe, the president of the Women's First Rodeo Association. And we hauled together to a few rodeos when we were going, but just a handful when her mom was still alive. And so Jimmy's a good friend, and it meant so much coming from her that she got to break the news to me, and I was speechless. And for me, that's pretty good.
Well, I think those are all the questions I have. Is there anything else you want to add or get on the record or anything like that?
Oh, I think we've covered it. I want to thank the Pro Rodeo Hall of Fame, Kent Sturman, you, Ashley, the staff have made this very meaningful to me. And I want to thank all the people that are involved to make the induction nice. I think Pikes Peak Rodeo is doing some things, and the PRCA and the WPRA, and I just would like to show my appreciation to everybody involved.